Let me tell you about the worst mistake 47 recruits ever made. It was a Monday morning, 5:30 hours, Fort Braxton Military Training Base, North Carolina. A mess hall filled with the newest class of Marine recruits fresh off the bus, loud, cocky, full of energy, and absolutely convinced they were the toughest people on the planet. And sitting alone in the far corner of that mess hall at a table by herself was a woman, mid-30s, plain gray t-shirt, faded jeans, no uniform, no insignia, no name tag. She was eating scrambled eggs slowly, staring at her tray like the food was the only thing in the world that mattered. She looked like nobody. The recruits thought she was nobody. One of them, a 22-year-old kid named Tyler Briggs, the self-appointed alpha of the group, looked at her, nudged his buddy, and said loud enough for half the mess hall to hear, "Hey, who let the janitor eat with the real soldiers?" The table erupted in laughter. The woman didn't look up, she didn't flinch, she didn't react at all, she just kept eating her eggs. And that lack of reaction made Tyler Briggs think he had won something. He had no idea, none of them did. Because that woman, the one they called the janitor, was Master Gunnery Sergeant Elena Vasquez, 19 years of active service, 4 combat deployments, 37 confirmed enemy engagements. She had a Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, a Purple Heart, and a Navy Cross, the second highest military decoration that can be awarded to a member of the United States Marine Corps. She had been shot 3 times, survived 2 IED blasts, led a 12-person squad through an 11-day siege in Helmand Province where they were outnumbered 8-1 and ran out of ammunition on day 7. She improvised weapons from destroyed vehicle parts and enemy equipment. All 12 of her squad members survived. The Pentagon had a classified file on her that was 847 pages long. Foreign military academies studied her tactics. Her call sign was Ghost because by the time the enemy knew she was there, it was already too late. And right now, Ghost was sitting in a mess hall, eating scrambled eggs, being called a janitor by a kid who had never fired a weapon outside of a video game. This is the story of what happened next. And trust me, by the end of this story, Tyler Briggs and every single recruit in that mess hall will remember this week for the rest of their lives. Master Gunnery Sergeant Elena Vasquez didn't look like what people expected a war hero to look like. She was 5'6", lean not bulky, 138 pounds. Her body was built for endurance, not show, dark brown hair cut short but not military regulation short. It fell just above her shoulders in a way that looked civilian. Her skin was olive-toned, her father was Mexican-American, her mother was Italian. She had dark brown eyes that at first glance seemed calm and unremarkable. At second glance, those eyes were something else entirely. They were the kind of eyes that had watched people die. The kind that had made split-second decisions between who lives and who doesn't. The kind that could look at a landscape and instantly identify 17 threats, 4 escape routes, and the optimal firing position, all in under 3 seconds. But none of that was visible when she was sitting in a mess hall eating eggs in a gray t-shirt. What was visible, if anyone had bothered to look closely, were the scars. A thin white line running from behind her left ear down to her collarbone, shrapnel from an RPG that hit 3 feet from her position in Fallujah. A puckered circular scar on her right shoulder, entry wound, 7.62 round, Helmand Province, 2014. A raised, jagged scar across her left forearm from hand-to-hand combat with an insurgent in a building clearance operation in Mosul. She had killed the man with his own knife after he broke her wrist. And if anyone had seen her back, which no one in that mess hall ever would, they would have seen a map of war. Burn scars from the first IED, shrapnel scars from the second, a surgical scar from the emergency field operation that saved her life when a bullet collapsed her left lung. But Elena Vasquez didn't show her scars, she didn't talk about her service, she didn't wear her medals, she didn't correct people when they underestimated her. She didn't need to. Because Elena Vasquez had been sent to Fort Braxton for one very specific reason, and these recruits were about to find out what that reason was. The morning of the mess hall incident, Elena had arrived at the base at 400, an hour and a half before the recruits even woke up. She had met with the base commander, Colonel Marcus Webb, in his office. Colonel Webb was a serious man, 54 years old, 3 decades of service. He had seen everything. And even Colonel Marcus Webb stood up from behind his desk when Alina Vasquez walked into his office. Not because of protocol, because of respect. Master Guns, Webb said, using the informal title for a master gunnery sergeant. Thanks for coming. Alina sat down, no small talk, that wasn't her style. What's the situation, Colonel? Webb leaned back in his chair and sighed. This incoming class 2024, Echo, they're a problem. 47 recruits. On paper, they're some of the best candidates we've had in years. High test scores, strong physical performance, but they have an attitude problem that I haven't seen in 20 years. What kind of attitude? Arrogance, pure, unearned arrogance. They think because they passed the entrance requirements, they're already Marines. Half of them are posting on social media about how tough they are. They haven't spent a single day in actual training and they already think they know everything. And they're drill instructors. Webb shook his head. We've had 3 DIs assigned to this class in the last month. The first one, Staff Sergeant Perkins, they filed a formal complaint against him for being too aggressive. The second, Gunnery Sergeant Clark, they basically ignored. He requested a transfer after 1 week. The third, Sergeant Hayes, lasted 4 days. She caught one of the recruits filming her during a training exercise and posting it online with a mocking caption. She walked out. Alina's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted. A temperature drop, like a room that suddenly gets cold and you can't figure out why. So you need someone who can't be filed against, ignored, or mocked, Alina said. I need someone who will break them down and rebuild them into actual Marines, without breaking any regulations, without giving them any ammunition to complain, and without losing her temper because that's what they want. They want a reaction. They feed on it. Alina was quiet for a moment. When do I start? The recruits are in the mess hall right now for breakfast. I want you to observe them first. Don't introduce yourself. Don't wear a uniform. Just watch. Get a read on them. Tomorrow morning at 500, you'll be formally introduced as their new senior drill instructor. And my authority. Absolute. Whatever you need, you get. Equipment, schedule changes, training modifications, all approved in advance. The only rule is no one gets physically hurt beyond standard training parameters and everything is documented. Alina stood up. Colonel, these recruits, how badly do you want them fixed? Webb looked at her. These kids have potential, Master Guns, real potential. But if someone doesn't humble them in the next 8 weeks, they'll either wash out of the program or worse, they'll graduate thinking they're invincible and they'll get themselves or someone else killed in the field. I understand. One more thing, Alina. She stopped at the door. Don't go easy on them. The corner of Alina's mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close. Colonel, when have I ever gone easy on anyone? And so, at 5:30 that Monday morning, Master Gunnery Sergeant Alina Vasquez, call sign Ghost, holder of the Navy Cross, survivor of 4 combat deployments, walked into the mess hall in a plain gray t-shirt and faded jeans, got a tray of scrambled eggs and sat down in the corner. Alone. Watching. The mess hall was loud. 47 recruits ages 18 to 24 eating breakfast with the energy of people who had absolutely no idea what was about to happen to them. They were in their PT clothes, green shorts, tan t-shirts with recruit printed on the front. They were laughing, shoving each other, talking about girls, talking about how easy the entrance test was, talking about how they were going to be the baddest class Fort Braxton has ever seen. Alina watched them the way a predator watches prey, not with hunger but with patience. She was cataloging every leader, every follower, every weak link, every loudmouth, every quiet one. She could already see the social hierarchy forming, who sat with whom, who spoke first, who laughed the loudest, who stayed quiet. And at the center of it all was Tyler Briggs. Tyler Briggs, 22 years old, 6'1", 195 pounds of gym-built muscle, blonde hair buzzed short in a self-done military cut, blue eyes, jawline sharp enough to cut glass. He was the kind of guy who had been told his entire life that he was special captain of his high school football team, homecoming king, full-ride athletic scholarship that he dropped out of because he wanted something more challenging. He was loud, he was charismatic, and he had already positioned himself as the leader of the class, not through competence but through volume. He talked the most, he laughed the loudest, he made the most jokes, and when he decided someone was beneath him, the entire group followed. His inner circle consisted of 3 other recruits. Jake Morrison, 21, Tyler's best friend from high school, a follower through and through. Whatever Tyler said, Jake agreed with. He was built like a tank but had the independent thinking capacity of a golden retriever. Danny Hart, 23, the only female in Tyler's circle. She was tough, athletic, and had a sharp tongue. She had joined the inner circle not because she followed Tyler, but because she genuinely believed she was better than everyone else. She was the kind of person who put others down to feel tall. Cody Raines, 20, the youngest. He was quiet compared to the others, more of a watcher than a talker, but he laughed at every joke Tyler made and never pushed back. He was there because being in Tyler's circle meant protection. These four sat at the center table, the alpha table. Every other recruit orbited around them. And then there were the others, the ones who didn't fit Tyler's circle, the ones who sat at the edges, the ones who kept their heads down. One in particular caught Alina's eye. Private First Class, recruit Maya Johnson, 19 years old, African American, quiet. She sat at the far end of a table, eating alone, reading a small book propped up against her water glass. She was smaller than most of the other recruits, 5'4", lean, wiry. She didn't talk to anyone, she didn't try to. Alina noticed something about Maya that none of the other recruits would have noticed. The way she held her fork in her left hand, even though her right hand was dominant. Alina could tell it was dominant because of the way Maya had carried her tray, right hand underneath, left hand stabilizing, but she ate with her left. That meant Maya was training her non-dominant hand, deliberately, on her own time, without being told. Alina filed that away. She also noticed that Tyler had noticed Maya too, not in a predatory way yet, but in the way that alpha personalities notice people who don't acknowledge their authority. Maya hadn't laughed at any of Tyler's jokes. She hadn't looked at him. She hadn't reacted to the social dynamics at all. And that, Alina knew, would become a problem, because people like Tyler Briggs cannot tolerate being ignored. It was at 5:47 that Tyler made his first move. He stood up from his table, carried his tray toward the disposal area, and deliberately walked past Alina's corner table. He looked down at her, at this woman in civilian clothes eating alone, and stopped. "Hey, you work here." Alina looked up, calm, unhurried. "Just eating breakfast," she said. "Yeah, but are you maintenance, kitchen staff, because this area is supposed to be for recruits only." Alina took a bite of her eggs, chewed, swallowed, then she said, "I was told I could eat here." Tyler smirked. He looked back at his table. Jake, Danny, and Cody were watching. This was a performance. "Okay, I'm just saying we're here for serious military training, not trying to be rude, but this isn't really a cafeteria for everyone." Alina looked at him, and for the first time she held his gaze, not aggressively, not confrontationally. She just looked at him, the way a surgeon looks at an X-ray, the way a sniper looks at a target through a scope. Tyler felt it. Something in that look made him uncomfortable, though he couldn't have explained why. It was like being watched by something that knew exactly what you were made of and wasn't impressed. "I'll be out of your way soon," Alina said mildly, and she went back to her eggs. Tyler stood there for a half second longer than he should have. Then he turned and walked back to his table. "Yo, who is that lady?" Jake asked. "Nobody," Tyler said, loud enough for Alina to hear. "Probably cleans the bathrooms or something." Laughter. "Hey," Danny added, "maybe she's the lunch lady checking if the eggs are up to code." More laughter. "Nah," Tyler said, even louder now. "She's definitely the janitor. Hey, yo, janitor lady, you missed a spot by the door." The whole table erupted. Alina didn't look up. She didn't flinch. She finished her eggs, stood up, placed her tray in the disposal, and walked out of the mess hall without looking at anyone. Tyler watched her go and felt a small surge of victory. He had established dominance. He had shown the group that he was the one who decided who belonged and who didn't. What Tyler Briggs didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that Alina Vasquez had just completed her assessment. She now knew exactly who every single recruit in that room was. And tomorrow morning at 500, they were going to meet Ghost. 47 recruits, one woman they called a janitor, and a wake-up call that none of them will ever forget. The sun hasn't even risen yet, and Master Gunnery Sergeant Alina Ghost Vasquez is about to walk into the barracks and turn these recruits' world completely upside down. But here's the thing, she's not going to yell. She's not going to scream. She's not going to do any of the things they expect. What she does instead will be far, far worse. 4:57 hours, Tuesday morning. It was still dark outside. The North Carolina humidity was already thick even before dawn. The barracks where Class 2024 Echo slept were quiet except for the sound of 47 recruits snoring, breathing, and one of them, Cody Raines, talking in his sleep about someone named Jessica. Elena Vasquez stood outside the barracks door. She was in full uniform for the first time. And the uniform told a story. Marine Corps Service Alpha, the green coat, the khaki shirt, the perfectly pressed trousers. But it was what was on the uniform that mattered. The ribbons, row after row after row of ribbons on her chest. More ribbons than most of these recruits had ever seen on one person in their entire lives. The Navy Cross ribbon, blue and white, sat at the top, the most prominent position. Below it, the Silver Star. Then the 2 bronze stars with valor, then the Purple Heart, then the Combat Action ribbon, then rows of deployment ribbons, service medals, and unit commendations that stretched so far down they almost reached her belt. On her collar, the insignia of a Master Gunnery Sergeant, the highest enlisted rank achievable without becoming a sergeant major. On her left breast, the Expert Rifleman badge and Expert Pistol badge. On her right breast, the Combat Instructor badge. And on her sleeve, 4 deployment stripes, 4 thin diagonal lines, each representing a combat deployment. She looked in that uniform like exactly what she was, one of the most decorated enlisted Marines in the modern Corps. At exactly 500, Elena opened the barracks door. She didn't slam it, she didn't kick it. She didn't blow a whistle or bang a trash can or any of the other theatrical things drill instructors sometimes did. She simply walked in, and she turned on the lights. That was it, lights on, nothing else. The fluorescent lights buzzed to life, recruits groaned, a few pulled blankets over their faces. Elena walked to the center of the barracks. She stood there, hands clasped behind her back, feet shoulder-width apart, the position of a person who has stood in far worse places than this and waited far longer than anyone here could imagine. She said nothing. For 30 seconds, she said absolutely nothing. Recruits started peeking out from their bunks. What was happening? There was no yelling, no screaming, no chaos, just a woman standing in the middle of the room in a uniform. Tyler Briggs was the first to sit up. He rubbed his eyes, looked at Elena. It took his sleep-fogged brain about 4 seconds to process what he was seeing. A woman in uniform with more ribbons than he'd ever seen, standing in their barracks. And then the recognition. His face changed. You could actually see the blood leave his cheeks in real time. It was her, the woman from the mess hall, the janitor, the one he'd mocked, the one he'd told to clean the floors, the one the entire table had laughed at. She was standing in front of him in a uniform that said she had done more, seen more, survived more, and achieved more than every single person in this room combined. Tyler's mouth opened, nothing came out. Elena waited. She waited until every single recruit was awake, sitting up in their bunks and looking at her. It took 2 minutes and 12 seconds, she counted. Then she spoke. Her voice was not loud, it was not soft. It was at a volume that required silence to be heard, and the room was already silent. My name is Master Gunnery Sergeant Elena Vasquez. I am your new senior drill instructor. I will be responsible for your training for the next 8 weeks. She paused, let it sink in. Some of you may recognize me. I was in the mess hall yesterday morning, eating breakfast, wearing civilian clothes, not bothering anyone. Another pause. And some of you had some very interesting things to say about me. The silence in that barracks was so thick you could have cut it with a Ka-Bar knife. Tyler Briggs looked like he was going to be physically sick. Elena didn't look at Tyler. That was deliberate. She addressed the room, not the individual. That was her method. She never singled people out verbally. She didn't need to. The guilt would do the work for her. I'm not going to repeat what was said. You all know, and you all chose, every single one of you, to either participate, laugh, or stay silent. There are 47 of you in this room. Not one of you said, hey, maybe we shouldn't talk to her like that. Not one. She let that hang in the air. In the Marine Corps, we have a saying, every Marine is a rifleman. Do you know what that means? It means that regardless of your rank, your job, your specialty, when it matters, you are all equal. The general and the private eat the same dirt in a foxhole. The pilot and the mechanic bleed the same color. And the master gunnery sergeant eating eggs in a mess hall deserves the same basic respect as the recruit eating eggs next to her. She took one step forward. You failed that test yesterday, all 47 of you. Now she let the silence work. She didn't fill it. She didn't rush. She let every recruit sit in their bunk and feel the weight of what she had just said. Then she pivoted, literally pivoted on her heel with the precision of someone who had done it 10,000 times, and walked toward the door. At the door, she stopped and spoke without turning around. PT begins in 15 minutes, full gear, outside. I will not remind you again. She walked out. The recruits exploded the moment the door closed. Bro, that was the lady from the mess hall. Tyler, you called her a janitor. Dude, did you see those ribbons? That's like a general or something. That's not a general, you idiot. That's a master gunnery sergeant. That's the highest. Shut up, everyone shut up. That was Tyler. His face was red, his fists were clenched. But for the first time since he'd arrived at Fort Braxton, Tyler Briggs did not look confident. He looked scared. Jake Morrison was standing next to him, looking equally pale. Bro, what do we do? Nothing, we don't do anything, it's fine. She probably doesn't even remember who said what. She looked right at you, Tyler. She looked at all of us. Danny Hart was sitting on her bunk, unusually quiet. She was doing what she always did when she felt genuinely threatened. She was calculating, working out the angles, figuring out who to blame and how to distance herself from the fallout. Cody Raines was the only one who said what everyone was thinking. Guys, we're dead. 15 minutes later, 47 recruits were standing in formation outside the barracks. It was still dark. The air was thick and warm. Mosquitoes were already finding their targets. Elena Vasquez stood in front of them. She had changed into PT gear, green shorts, tan t-shirt, running shoes, but even in PT clothes, she radiated authority. Her posture was a weapon. Her silence was a weapon. Everything about her was calibrated to communicate one thing: I am in control and you are not. Today, she said, we run. Simple, no elaboration, no warm-up speech. Follow me. She turned and started running. The recruits fell in behind her. The pace was moderate at first, a 7:30-mile pace, easy for fit young recruits. They were comfortable. Some of them were even whispering to each other. After 1 mile, Alina increased the pace, 7:00. After 2 miles, 6:30. After 3 miles, 6:00. By mile 4, recruits were starting to fall behind. Not a lot, a few steps here, a few steps there, but the gaps were forming. Alina was not slowing down. She was running at the front with the same smooth, effortless stride she had maintained since the start. She wasn't breathing hard. She wasn't sweating excessively. She looked like she could maintain this pace for another 20 miles. Tyler Briggs, who prided himself on his athletic ability, was struggling. Not dying, but struggling. His breathing was heavier than he wanted it to be. His legs were starting to feel the humidity. And the woman in front of him, the janitor, was gliding like a machine. By mile 5, 7 recruits had fallen behind significantly. By mile 6, 12. By mile 7, 18. Alina stopped at mile 8. She wasn't winded. She turned around and watched the recruits stagger in one by one over the next 4 minutes. When the last recruit arrived, a kid named Patterson, 18 years old, bent over and dry heaving, Alina spoke. In combat, I once ran 11 miles carrying a wounded Marine who weighed 190 pounds, through mountain terrain, at altitude, while being pursued by enemy forces. I was 31 years old and I had a cracked rib. She looked at the group. You just ran 8 miles on a flat road carrying nothing, and 18 of you couldn't keep up. Silence. This is not an insult, this is a fact. And facts are the foundation of improvement. You cannot improve what you refuse to acknowledge. She gave them 2 minutes to catch their breath, then. Tomorrow, we run again, same distance, and we will run every morning until every single one of you finishes within 30 seconds of me. We are a unit. We finish together or we don't finish at all. The rest of the day was a masterclass in controlled pressure. Alina didn't yell, not once. She never raised her voice above a conversational tone. She never used insults, profanity, or personal attacks. She didn't need to. What she did was far more effective. She was simply, undeniably, demonstrably better than all of them at everything. Obstacle course, she ran it first. Her time was faster than every single recruit. Rifle assembly, she did it blindfolded. In 47 seconds, the best recruit took 2 minutes and 12 seconds with his eyes open. Navigation exercise? She plotted a course through dense woodland using nothing but a compass and a paper map while the recruits fumbled with their GPS devices. Hand-to-hand combat demonstration? She asked for a volunteer. Tyler, trying to regain some credibility, stepped forward. He was 5 inches taller and 60 pounds heavier than her. Alina had him on the ground in 4 seconds. She used his own momentum against him, a textbook Marine Corps martial arts program takedown that used leverage instead of strength. Tyler hit the mat with a thud that echoed across the training yard. She extended her hand to help him up. "Good effort," she said, and she meant it. There was no sarcasm in her voice, no mockery. She was genuinely acknowledging that he had stepped forward. Tyler took her hand and got up. His face was red, but something in his expression had changed. Just slightly, just a crack in the armor. That evening after chow, Alina did something unexpected. She walked into the barracks during free time, the 1 hour recruits had before lights out to write letters, read, or handle personal business. She was carrying a folding chair. She set the chair up at the front of the barracks, sat down, and said, "I want to tell you why I'm here." The recruits stopped what they were doing. The room went quiet. "I was asked to come here because your previous drill instructors were unable to train you. One was complained against. One was ignored. One was humiliated on social media. 3 experienced, qualified Marines removed from their posts because this class decided they weren't worth respecting." She let that settle. "That tells me something about you, but it doesn't tell me what you think it tells me. You think it means you're tough. You think it means you can't be broken. You think it means you're already soldiers." She shook her head slowly. "What it tells me is that you're afraid." Confusion on their faces. People who mock others are afraid. People who tear down authority are afraid. People who need to be the loudest person in the room are afraid, because if they stop being loud, if they stop performing, they might have to sit with who they actually are, and they're terrified of what they'll find. Dead silence. "I'm not here to punish you for what you did yesterday in the mess hall. I'm not here to make your lives miserable as revenge. I'm here because somewhere inside each one of you is a Marine, a real one. And my job, my only job, is to find that Marine, drag them to the surface, and make sure they're strong enough to survive what's coming." She stood up. "Because what's coming? War, deployment, combat. It doesn't care about your ego. It doesn't care about your Instagram followers. It doesn't care who was the loudest at the breakfast table. It cares about one thing: can you keep the person next to you alive? That's it. That's the only question that matters." She folded her chair. "Tomorrow 500 we run." She walked out. The barracks was silent for a long time after she left. Maya Johnson, the quiet 19-year-old who had been eating alone and reading a book, looked up from her bunk. She had a small, barely visible smile on her face. She was the only one who wasn't afraid. The first week is over. 47 recruits have been humbled, outrun, outperformed, and outdisciplined by a woman they called a janitor. But humbling someone and changing them are 2 different things. The real test, the one that separates future Marines from future civilians, is about to begin. And it starts with a midnight exercise that will push every recruit past the point of breaking. But the biggest revelation won't come from the training. It will come from Alina Vasquez herself, when the recruits discover what really happened during the siege in Helmand Province. Week 1 had been about establishing authority. Alina had done that without raising her voice. By Friday, every recruit knew 3 things. 1. Master Gunnery Sergeant Vasquez was the real deal. Not a paper Marine, not a politician in uniform, a warrior. 2. She was physically, mentally, and tactically superior to every single person in the class. Not by a little, by a lot. 3. She was not cruel, she was not sadistic. She was fair. Ruthlessly, uncomfortably, undeniably fair. She applied the same standard to everyone, and she met that standard herself every time without exception. But week 2 was different. Week 2 was when Alina started breaking them down. It started on Monday of the 2nd week at 2:02 in the morning. The barracks lights came on. Alina was standing at the door. "Get dressed, full combat load, outside in 3 minutes." Groans, confusion, 3 minutes. Full combat load meant boots, utilities, flak jacket, helmet, pack, and weapon. In this case, training rifles waited to match the real thing. The recruits scrambled. Most of them made it out in 4 minutes. Alina didn't say anything about the extra minute, she just noted it. They stood in formation in the dark. The temperature had dropped to 48 degrees. It was raining, a cold, persistent North Carolina rain that soaked through clothing and settled into bones. Tonight, Alina said, we march. She didn't say how far, she didn't say where. She just turned and started walking into the darkness. The recruits followed. They marched for 4 hours, through mud, through woods, through a creek that was waist deep and cold enough to make teeth chatter, through terrain that climbed and dropped and climbed again. Alina was at the front the entire time, same pace, same posture, same silence. By hour 2, the complaints started. Not out loud, Alina had cured them of that in week 1, but in whispers, in looks, in the drag of feet and the slump of shoulders. By hour 3, the first recruit fell. A kid named Tors, not Captain Tors, just a recruit who shared the name, went down on a hillside. His ankle rolled in the mud. He hit the ground hard. Alina was there in seconds. She didn't carry him. She didn't baby him. She knelt beside him, checked his ankle, not broken, just twisted, looked him in the eye and said, "Can you walk?" Tors gritted his teeth. "Yes, Master Gunnery Sergeant." "Then walk, but don't be stupid about it. Lean on your partner." She looked at the recruit nearest to Tors, a kid named Williams. "You're his crutch. He leans on you, you keep moving, you don't slow down and you don't let him fall." Williams nodded. He got under Tors' arm. They kept moving. Alina noted this too. Williams hadn't hesitated. He hadn't complained. He had simply done what was needed. She filed him in the potential column. By hour 4, they reached their destination, a clearing in the woods with nothing in it except a flagpole with no flag. Alina stopped. The recruits collapsed around her, sitting, kneeling, 1 or 2 lying flat on their backs in the mud. She remained standing. "You just marched 12 miles in full combat load through rough terrain in cold rain. Some of you fell. Some of you helped those who fell. Some of you did neither. You just kept your head down and hoped no one noticed you." She looked across the group. In combat, there are 3 types of people: those who fall, those who help, and those who hide. Right now, I know exactly which type each of you is. She let that sink in. "We're going to stay here for the next 6 hours. You will build a camp. You will establish a perimeter. You will set watches. You will do this without my instruction because in the field you will not always have someone telling you what to do. Figure it out." She walked to the edge of the clearing and sat down against a tree, arms crossed, watching. The recruits looked at each other. No one moved. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Then Maya Johnson stood up. "Okay," she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. "We need shelter first. Rain's not stopping. Williams, Tors, you 2 stay put. Tors needs to keep that ankle elevated. I need 4 people to start gathering branches for lean-tos. Tyler, you and Jake take the east side. Danny, you and Cody take the west. I need 2 people on perimeter. Walk the edges, identify any hazards, find a water source if there is one." Everyone stared at her. Maya Johnson, the quiet girl who read books at breakfast and hadn't said more than 15 words to anyone all week, was giving orders. Tyler opened his mouth to say something dismissive, then he stopped. He looked at Alina, who was watching from her tree with an expression that said, "I am grabbing every single second of this." Tyler closed his mouth, and for the first time since he arrived at Fort Braxton, he followed someone else's lead. "Jake, come on east side, let's get branches." He walked off into the woods. Alina watched from her tree, and for the first time since she'd arrived at this base, the corner of her mouth lifted into something that was unmistakably a smile. The camp exercise lasted 6 hours. By the end of it, the recruits had built serviceable shelters, established a watch rotation, found a fresh water source, and most importantly, worked together. Not perfectly. There were arguments. There were mistakes. Danny Hart tried to take over from Maya at one point, and a brief power struggle erupted that was settled only when Alina, without moving from her tree, said one sentence. Johnson gave the first order. Johnson is in command. That was it. No debate, no discussion. Alina had spoken. Maya remained in command, and she was good at it, not because she was loud or aggressive, but because she was calm, clear, and she listened to people before making decisions. She asked Torres about his ankle before assigning him a task he could do sitting down. She asked Williams what his skill set was before giving him a role. She treated every person like they mattered. Elena noticed all of it. When they marched back to base, another 12 miles, this time in daylight, something had changed. The formation was tighter. The gaps between recruits were smaller. When someone stumbled, the person behind them reached out automatically, not because they were told to, but because the night in the woods had taught them something: you move together or you don't move at all. Tyler Briggs was walking near the back, not because he was slow, but because Torres was slow, and Tyler had, without being asked, taken over as Torres' crutch from Williams, who was exhausted. Elena was at the front. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She could hear the formation behind her. She could hear the rhythm of the boots. And for the first time, they sounded like a unit. Not Marines yet, not even close, but a unit. It was during week 3 that the story of Helmand Province came out. Not from Elena. Elena never talked about herself. It came from a visitor. Every month, Fort Braxton hosted a warrior speaker event where a veteran came to speak to the recruits about real combat experience. It was supposed to be motivational, inspirational, the kind of thing that reminded recruits why they were there. The speaker for that month was retired Gunnery Sergeant David "Mac" McCready. He was 44 years old, missing his left leg below the knee prosthetic, missing 2 fingers on his right hand, a scar running from his temple to his chin. And he had served under Elena Vasquez. He was one of the 12. Mac stood in front of the recruits in the base auditorium. Elena was sitting in the back, arms crossed, expression neutral. She hadn't been told what Mac was going to talk about. She had assumed it would be a general combat story, the kind veterans shared at these events. She was wrong. My name is Gunnery Sergeant David McCready, retired, and I'm here to tell you about the worst 11 days of my life and the woman who made sure I lived through them. Elena's jaw tightened just slightly. If you weren't watching her closely, you wouldn't have noticed. Mac told the story. Helmand Province, 2016. A squad of 12 Marines, Mac's squad, led by then Gunnery Sergeant Elena Vasquez, was conducting a patrol in a valley that intelligence said was clear. Intelligence was wrong. They were ambushed by a force of approximately 90 enemy fighters, outnumbered almost 8 to 1. Their communication equipment was destroyed in the first volley. Their vehicle was hit by an RPG and was on fire. They had no air support, no backup, no way to call for help. Elena made a decision in the first 60 seconds that Mac said saved all of their lives. Instead of retreating, which would have put them in open terrain where they'd be cut down, she ordered the squad to advance into a partially destroyed compound at the base of a hill. It was counterintuitive, it was insane, and it was exactly right. The compound had stone walls, thick ones, pre-Soviet era. They could stop bullets. Elena turned that compound into a fortress. For 11 days, 12 Marines held that compound against repeated assaults. Elena organized defenses, set up overlapping fields of fire, rationed ammunition, treated wounded, and when the ammunition ran out on day 7, she went out at night, alone, into the enemy positions and brought back captured weapons and ammunition. Alone at night, into enemy territory 3 times. I watched her leave through a gap in the wall, Mac said, his voice cracking. Each time I thought she was going to die. Each time she came back with an armful of AK-47s and ammunition. And each time she came back with enemy intel, positions, numbers, patrol patterns that she had gathered while she was out there, in the dark, by herself. The auditorium was dead silent. On day 9, I stepped on a pressure plate that we had missed, IED. It took my leg and 2 of my fingers. I was bleeding out. Elena, she performed field surgery. She cauterized my wound using a heated piece of metal from the destroyed vehicle. She held me down while she did it because there was no anesthesia. I screamed so loud I thought the enemy would hear us. He paused, wiped his eye. She saved my life, not just that day, every day for 11 days. She kept all 12 of us alive, every single one. The rescue team that finally reached us on day 11 said they had never seen anything like it. 12 Marines, outnumbered 8 to 1, with no communication, no support, no resupply, and all 12 walked out alive, because of her. Mac pointed to the back of the room, at Elena. That woman, sitting right there, she is the reason I got to see my daughter's first birthday. She is the reason Sergeant Williams got to walk his sister down the aisle. She is the reason Corporal Davis got to hold his newborn son. She gave us all our lives back, every single one of us. Every recruit in the room turned to look at Alina. Alina's expression hadn't changed, but if you were close enough and Maya Johnson, who was sitting 2 rows in front of her, was close enough, you could see that her eyes were wet. Not crying, Alina Vasquez didn't cry, but her eyes were wet. Mac finished with one sentence that hit like a mortar round. You recruits are the luckiest people in the Marine Corps right now, because you have Ghost training you, and if Ghost is training you, you will survive whatever comes next. After the speech, the mood in the barracks was different. Not just humbled, not just impressed, something deeper. The recruits had heard stories about war before in movies, in books, in the exaggerated tales their recruiter had told them. But this was different. This was a man standing in front of them with a missing leg and missing fingers, telling them that the woman who had been quietly running them into the ground for 3 weeks was the reason he was alive. Tyler Briggs sat on his bunk that night and didn't speak for almost an hour. Jake asked him if he was okay. Tyler just shook his head. I called her a janitor, Jake. I called a Navy Cross recipient a janitor. Dude, you didn't know. That's the point. I didn't know, and I didn't try to find out. I just decided she was nothing, and I treated her like nothing. What does that make me? Jake didn't have an answer. Cody Raines, who had been listening from his bunk, said quietly, "It makes you the guy who gets to decide what he does next." Tyler looked at him. For the first time, he actually looked at Cody not as a follower, not as a background character, but as a person. Yeah, Tyler said, I guess it does. Meanwhile, Maya Johnson knocked on Alina's office door. Enter. Maya walked in, stood at attention. At ease, Johnson, what do you need? Permission to speak freely, Master Gunnery Sergeant. Granted. Maya hesitated. Then, why didn't you tell them about Helmand, about the Navy Cross, about any of it? You could have told them the first day and they would have respected you immediately. Alina leaned back in her chair. Johnson, respect that's given because of a story is borrowed respect. It can be taken back the moment someone tells a better story. Respect that's earned through actions, through consistency, through showing up every single day and being exactly who you say you are, that's permanent. But they mocked you. They mocked a woman in a gray t-shirt. They didn't mock me because they didn't know me yet. And now they do, not because I told them who I am, but because someone who was there, someone who bled beside me told them. That's the difference between bragging and being known. Maya stood there for a moment, then she said, I want to be like you, Master Gunnery Sergeant. Alina looked at her, really looked at her. No, Johnson, you want to be like you, the best version of you, and from what I've seen so far, that's going to be something worth watching. Maya almost smiled. She caught herself. She was still at attention technically, but the corners of her mouth twitched. Dismissed, Johnson. I'm Master Gunnery Sergeant. Maya walked out. Alina sat alone in her office. She looked at a photo on her desk, 12 Marines, dirty, bloody, exhausted, standing in front of a destroyed compound in Helmand Province. All 12 alive, all 12 smiling. She touched the photo with her fingertip. Then she turned off the light and went to get some sleep. Tomorrow was week 4, and week 4 was when the real work began. 3 weeks down, 5 to go. The recruits have been humbled. They've heard the story of Helmand Province. They know who Alina Vasquez really is, but knowing isn't the same as becoming. And the next 5 weeks will test every single one of them in ways they never imagined, starting with a challenge that will expose the one thing every recruit tries to hide, their deepest weakness. And for Tyler Briggs, that weakness is something nobody in this class would ever guess. Week 4 began with an announcement that made every recruit's stomach drop. This week, Alina said at morning formation, we begin the leadership evaluation phase. Each of you will be placed in a simulated combat scenario where you will serve as squad leader. You will make real-time decisions under pressure. Your squad's performance and survival will depend entirely on your leadership. She paused. You will be evaluated not on whether your squad succeeds or fails, but on how you lead. Do you communicate clearly? Do you listen? Do you adapt when your plan falls apart? Do you take care of your people? Another pause. Because plans always fall apart, the question is what you do next. The leadership evaluation phase was Alina's masterpiece. She had designed it herself based on scenarios she had actually lived through. Each recruit would spend 1 full day as squad leader of a 10-person team, navigating a course that included A simulated ambush with blank-firing weapons and smoke grenades. A casualty evacuation scenario where one team member would be designated as wounded and needed to be transported. A navigation challenge through unfamiliar terrain with incomplete maps. A negotiation scenario where recruits had to interact with role players acting as hostile civilians. And the one that scared recruits the most, a moral dilemma scenario where there was no right answer, only less wrong answers. Each scenario was designed to strip away pretense. You couldn't fake your way through it, you couldn't charm your way through it, you either led or you didn't. Maya Johnson went on day 2. Her performance was, in Alina's private notes, exceptional natural tactical instincts, clear communication, genuine concern for team welfare, adapts under pressure without panic. Maya's squad completed the course with the highest score of any team so far. But what impressed Alina most wasn't the score, it was a moment during the casualty evacuation scenario. The designated wounded recruit was Danny Hart. Danny had been difficult all week, pushing back on Maya's orders, questioning her decisions, and at one point refusing to move to a position Maya had assigned. During the casualty scenario, Danny was lying on the ground with a simulated leg wound. Maya's team needed to carry her 300 meters to an extraction point while under simulated fire. Maya knelt beside Danny, looked her in the eye, and said, "I know you don't like me giving orders, that's fine, but right now you're wounded and my job is to get you out alive, so I need you to trust me for the next 10 minutes. Can you do that?" Danny stared at her, something shifted in her face, the hard mask she always wore cracked just for a second. "Yeah," Danny said, "yeah, I can do that." Maya's team carried Danny to the extraction point in 7 minutes flat. When they set her down, Danny looked up at Maya and said quietly, so only Maya could hear, "Thanks." One word, but from Danny Hart, it was a revolution. Tyler Briggs went on day 5. He had been dreading it, not because he lacked confidence. Tyler had never lacked confidence in his life. He was dreading it because, for the first time, his confidence wasn't enough. He had watched Maya lead with quiet competence. He had watched Williams lead with steady calm. He had watched even Cody Rain's quiet, unassuming Cody lead with a surprising steadiness that nobody expected. And Tyler was terrified that when his turn came, he would be exposed as the one thing he had spent his entire life pretending not to be. Ordinary. Tyler's father was a retired Army Ranger. His grandfather had served in Vietnam. His great-uncle had stormed the beaches at Normandy. The Briggs family had a wall in their home, literally a wall covered with military photos, medals, and commendations. Tyler had grown up in the shadow of that wall. Every family dinner, every holiday, every conversation eventually came back to the wall. Who served where? Who earned what? Who was the bravest? Tyler had joined the Marines not because he wanted to serve. He joined because he was expected to, because anything less would be a failure in the eyes of his family, and because he was terrified, absolutely terrified, that he wasn't good enough to live up to the wall. So he compensated, he got loud, he got cocky. He became the alpha not because he was the strongest, but because being the loudest was easier than being the best. And now, on day 5 of the leadership evaluation, there was nowhere to hide. Tyler's scenario started well. He gave clear orders during the ambush simulation. His voice was strong. His positioning was decent. The squad moved through the first phase without major issues. Then the plan fell apart. During the navigation phase, Tyler took a wrong turn. Not a small one, a significant one that put the squad 800 meters off course and heading toward a simulated minefield. The moment Tyler realized the mistake, he froze. Not physically, he was still standing, still walking, but mentally he froze. His brain locked up. The map in his hands might as well have been written in Sanskrit. He kept walking in the wrong direction, hoping he would somehow stumble onto the right path. His squad knew, they could see it, the uncertainty in his steps, the way he kept looking at the map and then looking around with an expression that said he had no idea where they were. No one said anything, they followed, because that's what the group dynamic had always been: follow Tyler, don't question Tyler. Except one person. Cody Rains. Cody, quiet, unassuming, never push back. Cody stepped forward. "Tyler, I think we're off course." Tyler didn't respond. "Tyler, we need to stop and recheck the map." Tyler's jaw clenched. I've got it. You don't. We're heading southeast. We should be heading northeast. We're about to walk into the simulated minefield. Tyler stopped. He turned around. For a moment, just a moment, the old Tyler flashed across his face. The one who would shut Cody down with a look. The one who would say something cutting and dismissive. But something had changed in 4 weeks. Something Alina had planted was growing, slowly, painfully, but growing. Tyler looked at the map, he looked at the compass, he looked at the terrain. And then he did something he had never done in his entire life. You're right, he said, I'm lost. Cody, take the map, get us back on course. Cody took the map without celebration, without gloating. He simply plotted the correct route and led the squad to the right position. Alina was watching from 200 meters away through binoculars. She had seen the freeze, she had seen the struggle, and she had seen the moment Tyler Briggs chose humility over ego. In her notebook she wrote, Briggs, Day 5 breakthrough. But the scenario wasn't over. The moral dilemma phase was last, and Tyler's scenario was one Alina had designed specifically for recruits who struggled with leadership identity. The setup, Tyler's squad arrived at a simulated village where role players were acting as civilians. One of the civilians, played by a training officer, approached Tyler and told him that there was a wounded child in a building 400 meters ahead. But between Tyler's squad and the building was an open field with a suspected sniper position. Option A, send the full squad across the field to rescue the child. Risk, sniper could wound or kill squad members. Option B, send a small team of 2, faster, lower profile, but less protection. Option C, don't go. The child is not a military objective. Going after the child puts the entire squad at risk for a non-mission target. There was no right answer, that was the point. Tyler stood there for 30 seconds. His squad watched him. The clock was ticking. The scenario had a time limit. Cody, Tyler said, what do you think? Again, Tyler asking for input. Again, something the old Tyler would never have done. Cody said, small team, 2 people, fast, in and out. Tyler nodded, then he said, I'll go, I need 1 volunteer. Before anyone could respond, Tyler added, this isn't an order, I'm asking. Maya Johnson, who was on Tyler's squad for this exercise, stepped forward, I'll go. Tyler and Maya crossed the open field at a sprint. The simulated sniper fired. Blank rounds cracked through the air. They hit the building, grabbed the wounded child, a weighted dummy, and sprinted back. They made it. The scenario ended. The clock stopped. Alina walked over. She stood in front of Tyler. Briggs, why did you go yourself? Tyler was breathing hard. Sweat was dripping down his face. He looked at Alina, really looked at her, and said, because a leader doesn't ask people to take risks, he's not willing to take himself. Alina held his gaze for 3 full seconds, then she nodded. That's correct, Briggs. She turned and walked away. 2 words, that's correct. But the way she said them and the nod Tyler would remember for the rest of his life. That night, Tyler did something else unexpected. He found Maya in the barracks during free time. He walked up to her bunk. Johnson. Maya looked up from her book. Briggs, I owe you an apology. Maya raised an eyebrow. Not just for today, for everything. For the mess hall when I was mocking Master Gunnery Sergeant Vasquez and you were sitting there and I was being a complete idiot, Maya offered. Yeah, that, Tyler almost smiled. But also, I never treated you like an equal from day one. I looked at you and decided you didn't matter because you were quiet, and you turned out to be the best leader in this entire class. Maya closed her book. Tyler, I didn't need your respect to know my own worth, but I appreciate you saying this. And for what it's worth, what you did today, going across that field yourself, that took guts. I learned it from watching you. Maya did smile now, small, brief, but real. No, she said, you learned it from watching her. She pointed toward Alina's office. Tyler nodded, yeah, I guess I did. Week 4 ended with Alina reviewing her evaluations. She sat in her office with a cup of coffee that had gone cold 2 hours ago, reading through her notes on all 47 recruits. She opened a file on her desk, a file she hadn't shown anyone. Inside was a document stamped classified. It was about Maya Johnson. Maya's application file, her background check, her family history. Maya Johnson's mother had been a Marine, Staff Sergeant Lisa Johnson. She had been killed in action in Kandahar Province, Afghanistan in 2012. Maya was 7 years old when two Marines in dress blues knocked on her grandmother's door. Maya had never told anyone in the class, she had never mentioned it. She wore no memorial bracelet. She carried no visible reminder. But Alina knew, because Alina had read the file before she ever arrived at Fort Braxton, and because Alina had known Staff Sergeant Lisa Johnson. They had served together. Lisa Johnson had been in Alina's first squad, before Helmand, before the Navy Cross, before Ghost. Lisa Johnson was the first Marine Alina ever lost, and her death was the reason Alina became the leader she was, because she swore on the day Lisa died that she would never lose another Marine under her command. And she never did. 12 Marines in Helmand, all 12 alive. Because of a promise she made to a dead woman whose daughter was now sleeping in a barracks 200 feet away. Alina closed the file. She looked at the photo on her desk, the 12 Marines in Helmand. Then she looked at another photo, older, faded, a young Alina Vasquez standing next to a smiling woman in desert camo. Lisa Johnson. Alina touched the photo. "I've got her, Lisa," she whispered. "She's going to be okay." 8 weeks began with mockery, silence, and a woman eating eggs alone in a mess hall. Now those 8 weeks are almost over. 47 recruits have been broken down and rebuilt. Tyler Briggs has transformed from a loudmouth bully into something he never expected to become. Maya Johnson has emerged as the class's natural leader, and Alina Vasquez Ghost has one final lesson to teach. But this lesson isn't about combat or tactics or leadership. It's about something far harder, the truth. And the truth is going to change Maya Johnson's life forever. Weeks 5 through 7 were the crucible. Alina pushed harder than ever. The training scenarios became more complex, more exhausting, more psychologically demanding. Sleep deprivation exercises, 72-hour field operations, combat simulations that ran through the night with smoke, noise, and chaos designed to overwhelm the senses. But something remarkable was happening. The class was holding. Not just surviving, holding, functioning, communicating, supporting each other. When someone fell, someone else picked them up. When someone froze, someone else stepped forward. When the plan fell apart and Alina made sure it always fell apart, someone adapted. The alpha table from the mess hall was gone. There was no alpha table anymore. There was no hierarchy based on volume or popularity. There was a hierarchy based on competence, trust, and accountability. Exactly the hierarchy that Alina had been building since day one. Tyler Briggs had become, quietly and without fanfare, one of the most reliable recruits in the class. He wasn't the loudest anymore. He wasn't the funniest. But he was the first to volunteer for the hard tasks. The first to carry extra weight when someone was struggling. The first to admit when he didn't know something and ask for help. His relationship with Maya had evolved from indifference to respect to something that looked a lot like genuine friendship. They argued frequently about tactical decisions during exercises. But they argued the way Marines argue, with respect, with logic, and with the shared understanding that the argument was in service of the mission, not the ego. Danny Hart had undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation. The sharp-tongued, others-diminishing, self-elevating Danny of week 1 was gone. In her place was a woman who had discovered that real strength wasn't about tearing others down, it was about building them up. She had become the class's unofficial morale officer. When recruits were at their lowest, exhausted, cold, miserable, Danny was the one who cracked a joke, told a story, or simply sat next to them in silence until they were ready to keep going. Jake Morrison had found his own identity outside of Tyler's shadow. He turned out to be an exceptional navigator, possibly the best in the class. Alina had him lead the navigation portions of multiple exercises, and his accuracy was nearly flawless. He didn't need Tyler to define him anymore. He had found something he was genuinely good at, and it had given him confidence that was real, not borrowed. Cody Rains had become the class's quiet conscience. He didn't talk much, he never had, but when he spoke, people listened because everything he said was measured, thoughtful, and usually right. Alina had privately told Colonel Webb that Cody Rains had the highest emotional intelligence of any recruit I've seen in 19 years of service. In Maya Johnson, Maya was something else entirely. Alina watched her with a mix of professional pride and something deeply personal that she kept locked inside her chest. Maya led with the same quiet intensity that her mother had. She listened like her mother had. She cared about her people the way her mother had. And she had no idea. It was during week 7, the second to last week, that Alina made her decision. She was going to tell Maya. Not because she had to, not because the training required it, but because Maya deserved to know. She deserved to know that her mother's legacy was alive, not just in a file or a memorial, but in the woman who had trained 47 recruits and kept a promise that was 12 years old. Alina waited until Wednesday evening, free time. She sent a message through the barracks duty officer, Johnson, my office, 1900. Maya arrived at exactly 1900, stood at attention. At ease, Johnson, sit down. Maya sat. She could tell something was different. Alina's voice was different, not her instructor voice, not her command voice, something else, something human. Johnson, I need to tell you something, and it's not related to your training, it's personal. Maya's eyes widened slightly. In 8 weeks, Alina Vasquez had never said anything personal, ever. Alina opened the file on her desk, the classified one. She pulled out the old, faded photograph, the one of a young Alina standing next to a smiling woman in desert camo. She placed it on the desk in front of Maya. Maya looked at the photo, her breathing stopped. That's my mom, she whispered. Yes. You knew my mom. I served with your mother, Staff Sergeant Lisa Johnson. She was in my first squad, my first deployment, she was. Alina stopped. She took a breath. For the first time in 8 weeks, for the first time in years, her composure cracked. Not much, just a fracture, but Maya saw it. She was the best Marine I ever served with, Alina said. Better than me, I want you to know that. She was better than me in every way that mattered. Maya was staring at the photo. Tears were forming but not falling. She was holding them the way her mother probably held them, with discipline and will. She was killed in Kandahar in 2012. You were 7. I know, Maya said. 2 Marines came to our door, my grandmother answered. I was standing behind her. I saw their faces and I knew before they said anything. Alina nodded. What I never told anyone, what I've carried for 12 years, is that your mother died covering my position. We were taking fire from a compound. I was moving to a new position and I was exposed. Your mother saw the shooter before I did. She pushed me down and took the round that was meant for me. Silence. She saved my life, Maya, and she died doing it. The tears fell now, not from Maya, from Alina. Master Gunnery Sergeant Alina Ghost Vasquez, who had survived 4 deployments, an 11-day siege, 3 bullet wounds, 2 IED blasts, and 19 years of combat, was crying in front of a 19-year-old recruit. After she died, Alina continued, her voice steady even through the tears, I made a promise. I promised her, I promised Lisa, that I would never lose another Marine under my command, that every person I led would come home alive. She pointed to the Helmand photo. 12 Marines, 11 days, all 12 alive, because of a promise I made to your mother. Maya was crying now too, silently, tears streaming down her face, but her back was straight and her eyes were forward. She was crying like a Marine. When I saw your name on the recruit list, Alina said, I requested this assignment. I pulled strings, I called in favors. I came here specifically for you, not to baby you, you don't need babying, but to make sure you got the training you deserved, the training your mother would have wanted you to have. Maya's hands were shaking. She looked at the photo of her mother, young, smiling, alive, and she looked at Alina, who was right here alive because her mother had made a choice in a fraction of a second that changed everything. She'd be proud of you, Maya. She would be so proud of you. Maya broke, not her composure, her wall. The wall she had built at 7 years old when she saw those 2 Marines at her door. The wall she had maintained for 12 years. The wall that kept her quiet, that kept her reading books alone at breakfast, that kept her from getting too close to anyone because the last person she was close to left and never came back. That wall crumbled. Maya put her face in her hands and sobbed. Alina stood up, walked around the desk, and did something she had never done with a recruit in 19 years of service. She hugged her. She held Maya Johnson, the daughter of the woman who saved her life, and let her cry. I've got you, Alina whispered. I've got you, Maya. She asked me to, and I've got you. Week 8, final week, graduation week. The atmosphere at Fort Braxton was electric. Class 2024 Echo had gone from being the most problematic class in recent memory to being, in Colonel Webb's words, the most improved class I have ever seen. All 47 recruits had passed, every single one, no washouts, no medical drops, no behavioral dismissals. Alina had done what 3 drill instructors couldn't, not through yelling, not through fear, not through punishment. Through being exactly who she was, every single day, without exception. Graduation day was a clear, bright Saturday morning in November. The families of the recruits filled the parade ground, parents, siblings, grandparents, partners, children. The recruits stood in formation in their dress blues. For most of them, it was the first time they had worn the uniform. They stood taller in it, straighter, not because the uniform demanded it, but because they had earned it. Colonel Webb gave the opening address. It was standard, "Congratulations, welcome to the Marine Corps, serve with honor." Then he introduced the keynote speaker. "It is my distinct honor to introduce the senior drill instructor of Class 2024 Echo, a Marine whose service record speaks for itself, though she would never speak of it herself. 4 combat deployments, a Navy Cross, a Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, a Purple Heart, and a reputation among her peers as one of the finest leaders the Marine Corps has ever produced. Please welcome Master Gunnery Sergeant Alina Vasquez." The applause was thunderous. The recruits, her recruits, applauded louder than anyone. Alina walked to the podium. She looked out at the 47 faces she had come to know better than they knew themselves. She didn't use notes. She never used notes. 8 weeks ago, I walked into a mess hall in a gray t-shirt and got called a janitor. Laughter, nervous, embarrassed laughter from the recruits. Tyler Briggs's face turned red, but he was smiling, a real smile. 8 weeks ago, you were 47 individuals who thought being a Marine was about being tough, being loud, and being right. You mocked what you didn't understand. You dismissed what didn't look impressive. You followed the loudest voice instead of the wisest one. She paused. Today, you are 47 Marines, not because you can run 8 miles or assemble a rifle blindfolded, though you can, but because you have learned the only lesson that truly matters. She looked directly at Tyler. The strongest person in the room is not the loudest. It's the one who lifts others up when they fall. She looked at Maya. The best leader is not the one who demands respect. It's the one who earns it quietly, consistently, every single day. She looked at Danny. The toughest person is not the one who never breaks. It's the one who breaks and gets back up. She looked at all of them. And the truest Marine is not the one with the most medals on their chest. It's the one who makes sure the person next to them gets to go home. She paused. The parade ground was silent except for the wind and the distant sound of the American flag snapping on its pole. I want to tell you about a Marine I served with, Staff Sergeant Lisa Johnson. She was killed in action in Kandahar province in 2012. She died saving my life. She was 28 years old. She left behind a 7-year-old daughter. Alina's voice was steady, but if you knew what to listen for, and the recruits did now, you could hear the weight. I made a promise to Lisa Johnson that I would never lose another Marine, and I haven't. 12 Marines in Helmand province, all 12 alive. And now 47 Marines in Class 2024 Echo, all 47 standing in front of me. She looked at Maya. Maya was standing in the front row, tears on her face, back straight, chin up. Lisa Johnson's daughter is standing in this formation right now. Private First Class Maya Johnson. And I want you all to know Maya didn't get any special treatment. She didn't need it. She earned her place here the same way every single one of you did, through sweat, through struggle, through choosing to keep going when everything in her body told her to stop. The recruits turned to look at Maya. The families in the audience were murmuring. Maya's grandmother, who was sitting in the front row of the audience, had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming. Alina continued. Maya, your mother was the bravest person I ever knew, and today, looking at you in that uniform, I know she's watching, and I know she's proud. Maya's composure held, barely, but it held, because she was a Marine now, and Marines hold. Alina stepped back from the podium. Class 2024 Echo, dismissed. The formation broke, families rushed forward. There were hugs, tears, laughter, photos. Tyler Briggs found Alina in the crowd. He walked up to her and stood at attention. Master Gunnery Sergeant, permission to speak. Granted, Briggs. I owe you an apology, not just for the janitor comment, for everything. For who I was when I walked in here. You didn't just train me. You made me someone I'm not ashamed to be. Elena looked at him. Briggs, you were never someone to be ashamed of. You were just someone who hadn't been tested yet. Now you have been, and you passed. Tyler's eyes glistened. He snapped a salute, crisp, sharp, perfect. Elena returned it. Later that day, after the families had gone and the parade ground was empty, Elena and Maya sat on a bench outside the barracks. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Maya said, "You kept your promise." Elena nodded. "She would have liked you, you know," Maya said. "My mom, she would have liked the gray t-shirt thing. She had a weird sense of humor." Elena laughed, a real laugh, the first one in a long time. "She did. She once put hot sauce in my MRE and watched me eat the whole thing without saying a word." Maya laughed too, and for a moment, just a moment, it felt like Lisa was there with them, sitting on that bench, smiling. Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a worn photograph, wallet-sized, her mother in uniform. She placed it on the bench between them. Elena looked at it, then she reached into her own pocket and pulled out an identical photo, the same image, same size, same wear. They placed the photos side by side. Two copies of the same woman, carried by two different people, for 12 years, across continents and combat zones and mess halls and barracks. Together now. "Semper Fi, Mom," Maya whispered. "Semper Fi, Lisa," Elena whispered. And they sat there as the sun went down over Fort Braxton, two Marines bound by a woman who had given everything, connected by a promise that was kept. This story began with mockery in a mess hall, a woman in a gray t-shirt, a kid who thought being loud made him strong. It ended with 47 Marines, a kept promise, a mother's legacy, and the simple truth that the strongest people in the world don't need to tell you who they are. They show you. Every day without exception. Elena Vasquez never asked for respect. She didn't demand it. She didn't announce her medals or her missions or her scars. She just showed up, she did the work, she was exactly who she said she was, and she let her actions speak louder than any words ever could. And 47 recruits who started by mocking her ended by saluting her. Because that's what real strength looks like, not the loudest voice in the room, not the biggest muscles, not the most Instagram followers. Real strength is the quiet woman in the gray t-shirt who doesn't need you to know she's a hero. She already knows. Semper Fidelis, always faithful. To the mission, to the people beside you, and to the promises you make even when the person you made them to is gone. Semper Fi, Ghost, Semper Fi.